She said, "I'm pregnant, but it might be yours or my ex's." I replied, "Congrats." Then I filed for divorce and had my lawyer send her the paperwork on the day of her baby shower. Her hysterical call demanding I pay child support. I, 37M, never thought I'd be posting one of these stories. I was the guy who rolled his eyes at relationship drama on Reddit, the guy who wondered why people air their dirty laundry online. Well, life comes at you fast. Sometimes you need to vent to strangers because the people who know you are too close to the situation. And sometimes you want to warn others about the red flags you missed. Rebecca, 35F, and I met through work 6 years ago. She was smart, ambitious, and we clicked immediately. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and I thought we were solid. She had her quirks, who doesn't? But nothing that raised alarms. One of those quirks was staying friends with her exes, and I mean all of them. She had this theory that if you once cared enough about someone to date them, there must be something worthwhile about them as a person. I didn't love it, but I'm not the jealous type. Besides, I'd met most of them at various social gatherings, and they seemed harmless enough. Except for Jason. Jason was the one who got away, according to Rebecca. They dated in college, broke up when he moved across the country for grad school, and reconnected as friends a year before I met her. He was now living back in our city, working as a professor at the local university. Whenever Jason's name came up, Rebecca would get this look, a mixture of nostalgia and something else I couldn't quite place. But I trusted her. That was my first mistake. Fast forward to last November. Rebecca had been acting distant for a few weeks. Working late, being vague about her plans, the classic signs that I was too trusting to recognize. Then one Sunday morning, while I was making pancakes, her favorite, she dropped the bomb. "Hey, so, I'm pregnant." I froze, spatula in mid-flip. We hadn't been trying, but we hadn't been not trying either. After 4 years of marriage, a baby felt like the natural next step. Wow, that's amazing," I said, genuinely excited despite the surprise. Rebecca didn't smile. Instead, she examined her fingernails and said with all the emotion of someone discussing the weather, "The thing is, it might not be yours. It could be Jason's." The pancake burned as I tried to process what she'd just said. "What do you mean it might be Jason's?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it anyway. "We've been seeing each other for a few months. It just happened." She shrugged, actually shrugged, like she was telling me she'd grabbed the wrong coffee order. "I'm about 8 weeks along, and the timing, well, it could be either of you." I'd like to say I had some dignified response, that I demanded answers or threw her out on the spot. But the truth? I just said congratulations in a hollow voice, turned off the stove and walked out of the house. I drove around for hours, trying to make sense of it all. The betrayal was bad enough, but the casual way she'd told me, like I should just accept that my wife had been sleeping with her ex, and now I might be raising his kid? That was what really broke me. When I finally came home that evening, Rebecca acted like nothing was wrong. She was on the couch, scrolling through baby names on her phone. I realized then that she fully expected me to just deal with it, to raise this child regardless of paternity, no questions asked. "We need to talk about this," I said. "About what?" "The baby. I know it's a shock, but we'll figure it out. If it's Jason's, he already said he doesn't want to be involved anyway." I must have looked like I'd been slapped, because she finally seemed to register my distress. "Look, I know I messed up, but this could be a good thing. We wanted a family, right? And now we'll have one." That's when I knew our marriage was over. In her mind, her affair was just a minor bump in the road, not a fundamental betrayal of trust. And she saw me as such a pushover that I'd raise another man's child while she potentially continued seeing him. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I nodded and said we should take some time to process everything. That we'd figure it out. She seemed relieved by my apparent acceptance. That was her first mistake. The next morning, while Rebecca was in the shower, I checked her phone. I know. Invasion of privacy and all that. But at that point, I felt I had the right to know the extent of the betrayal. What I found was worse than I imagined. Hundreds of messages between her and Jason going back over a year. The affair hadn't just happened. It had been carefully planned and executed while I remained oblivious. Even more disturbing were the messages after she discovered her pregnancy. The two of them discussing what to tell me, with Jason suggesting they let me down easy by pretending the paternity was uncertain when they both seemed to believe the baby was his. Rebecca arguing that since I was more financially stable, it would be better if I accepted the baby as mine, regardless of biology. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I called in sick to work and went to see a divorce attorney. Now, I should mention that I live in North Carolina, where adultery still matters in divorce proceedings as a form of marital misconduct. It doesn't guarantee a favorable settlement, but it can influence things, especially with the right evidence. My lawyer, Diane, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen it all. "Good thing you got those texts," she said after hearing my story. "In our state, communications on a shared family plan or device are generally admissible in divorce proceedings. But we need more. Does she keep a diary? Are there witnesses to the affair? Bank statements showing suspicious expenses? The more ammunition we have, the better position you'll be in." Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. I discovered Rebecca had been using our joint account to buy gifts for Jason. She'd taken sick days at work to meet him at hotels. She'd even taken a weekend trip with him that she'd told me was a girls' trip with her college friends. All the while, I played the role of supportive, if slightly shell-shocked, husband. I went to her first prenatal appointment. I listened to her talk about nursery colors. I even had dinner with her parents, who were thrilled about becoming grandparents. "You're handling this really well," Rebecca told me one night, patting my hand condescendingly. "I was worried you'd freak out about the Jason thing, but I'm glad you're being mature." I smiled and squeezed her hand. "What matters is that we're having a baby," I lied. By Christmas, Rebecca was starting to show. She wanted to wait until after the holidays to announce the pregnancy to our wider circle of friends, which worked perfectly for my timeline. The divorce paperwork was ready by mid-January. All I needed was the right moment to pull the trigger. That moment presented itself when Rebecca mentioned her friends were throwing her a baby shower in February. "Isn't it a little early?" I asked, knowing she'd be around 16 weeks then. "Don't people usually wait until the third trimester?" "Well, Megan is going on sabbatical in March and I want her to be there," Rebecca explained. "Besides, my doctor said given my age and some minor complications, it's better to celebrate now while everything's stable." I later learned there were no complications, just another manipulation to garner sympathy and rush celebrations before any potential drama. The day of the baby shower arrived. Rebecca was glowing with excitement as she left for her friend Megan's house, where a couple dozen of her closest friends and family members would be gathering to shower her with gifts and attention, her two favorite things. I waited until I knew the party would be in full swing, then sent a text to Diane. Green light. 2 hours later, my phone exploded with calls and texts. I let them all go to voicemail as I sat in a bar downtown, nursing a whiskey and waiting for the storm to pass. When I finally listened to the messages, Rebecca's was a mix of sobbing and screaming. How could I ambush her like this? On today of all days? In front of everyone she knew? Did I have any idea how humiliating it was to be served divorce papers while opening gifts for her baby? That had been precisely the point, of course. The same humiliation I'd felt when she casually informed me I might be raising her affair partner's child. The following weeks were chaos. Rebecca ping-ponged between begging me to reconsider and threatening to take me for everything I had. Jason suddenly vanished from the picture. Apparently, a pregnant ex-girlfriend with a vengeful husband wasn't part of his 5-year plan. Rebecca's family, who had always treated me like a son, was divided. Her mother called to tearfully ask if there was any chance of reconciliation. Her father, to my surprise, took me out for a beer and apologized for his daughter's behavior. "She's always been selfish," he admitted. "Her mother and I spoiled her. I love my daughter, but what she did to you, no man deserves that." Through it all, my lawyer kept me focused on the legal process rather than the emotional fallout. We had a strong case for a fault-based divorce, and with the evidence I'd gathered, Rebecca had limited leverage. Still, she tried everything. She claimed the messages were taken out of context. She said the affair had ended before she got pregnant. She even suggested that I had been emotionally unavailable, driving her into Jason's arms. None of it worked. The turning point came when Diane convinced Rebecca's lawyer that a paternity test was inevitable and delaying would only cost his client more in legal fees. This was a crucial battle, as North Carolina law creates a presumption that a husband is the legal father of any child conceived during the marriage. Diane filed a specific motion to address paternity alongside our divorce petition. After some legal back and forth, Rebecca finally agreed to a non-invasive prenatal paternity test, NIP, which uses cell-free fetal DNA from the mother's blood and can be safely performed after 8 weeks. The results came back a week later. I was not the father of Rebecca's child. The relief I felt was indescribable. With paternity established, the divorce proceedings accelerated. Since we had no children together, no significant shared assets beyond our modest home, we were both renters before marriage, and a prenup that protected my family's inheritance, there wasn't much to fight over. I agreed to a fair settlement, more generous than required, according to Diane, just to be done with it all. We split the equity in our home, divided our retirement accounts proportionally based on the duration of our marriage, each kept our own vehicles and personal possessions, and I voluntarily gave her $10,000 to help with her transition, though I wasn't legally required to do so. Due to the clear evidence and Rebecca's lawyer advising her not to drag out proceedings that would only increase her legal fees, our divorce was finalized in May, approximately 90 days after filing, the minimum waiting period required in our state. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks ago, Rebecca gave birth to a baby boy. The baby arrived slightly early at 37 weeks, but was healthy. Yesterday, I received a hysterical call from her demanding child support. "The baby looks just like you," she sobbed. "The test must have been wrong. You need to take responsibility." "Rebecca, we've been over this. The DNA test was conclusive. I'm not the father. But Jason won't help. He's blocked my number, changed his office hours at the university, and his lawyer says without a court-ordered paternity test, he has no obligation. You're the one who made vows to me. You should support us." I almost laughed at the audacity. "Those vows became null and void when you cheated. This is between you and Jason now. I'll take you to court," she threatened. "I'll demand another test." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "The result will be the same, and you'll be adding legal fees you can't afford to a situation that's already settled." She hung up on me, but the calls kept coming. Then the texts. Then messages from her friends telling me what a deadbeat I was for abandoning my family. I've blocked them all now, and Diane assures me Rebecca has no legal grounds for demanding support from me given the established paternity and our finalized divorce. Still, I wouldn't put it past her to try. It's been a hell of a 6 months. I've moved to a new apartment, started therapy, and even gone on a few dates, though nothing serious. The trust issues are still raw. The strangest part has been watching mutual friends choose sides. Rebecca was strategic in controlling the narrative. She told everyone about the pregnancy first, positioning herself as the vulnerable, expectant mother. By the time news of the affair emerged, many friends were already emotionally invested in her journey to motherhood and chose to overlook the infidelity. Others who I barely knew have reached out with unexpected support, often because they'd witnessed or experienced something similar. Last week, I ran into Megan, the friend who hosted the baby shower, at a coffee shop. I braced for an awkward encounter, but she surprised me by sitting down at my table. "I want you to know that not all of us believe her version," she said quietly. "I saw those messages when she asked to use my phone to text Jason during the shower." She left her conversation open. What she did was wrong, and I told her so. It wasn't much, but it felt like vindication from an unexpected source. If there's a lesson in all this, I suppose it's to trust your instincts. I always felt uneasy about Jason, but I ignored it because I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, controlling husband. There's a difference between healthy trust and willful blindness, and I was definitely in the latter category. I also learned that how someone handles small betrayals predicts how they'll handle big ones. Rebecca had a history of little lies, exaggerating stories to make herself look better. forgetting to mention male friends joining supposedly all-female outings, taking credit for others' ideas at work. I rationalize these as harmless quirks rather than seeing them as character flaws. For those wondering about Jason, Rebecca eventually filed a paternity action against him after the baby was born. Despite his attempts to avoid service, he was legally required to submit to testing, which confirmed he was the father. He's now legally established as the father and required to pay child support based on his income as a professor. Rebecca posts passive-aggressive updates about deadbeat dads on social media, though she's careful never to name Jason directly. Just vague references that insiders would understand. Meanwhile, she maintains her image as a strong single mom who needs no man. The final twist in this saga came just yesterday. Rebecca's younger sister, who I always got along with, sent me a message. "Just thought you should know." Rebecca admitted to me that she knew all along the baby was Jason's. She thought you'd be a better father and provider, so she tried to pass it off as possibly yours. "I love my sister, but you deserved better." I thanked her for the information, but asked her to stop sending me updates about Rebecca unless it was something I truly needed to know. I'm ready to close this chapter for good. So here I am starting over at 37. It's not where I expected to be, but it's far better than the alternative. Raising another man's child with a woman who saw me as nothing more than a convenient wallet and babysitter. For anyone facing a similar situation, get evidence, get a lawyer, and get out. The pain of leaving is temporary. The pain of staying would have been permanent. Update 1 month later. First, thank you to everyone for the supportive comments and messages. I didn't expect this post to get the attention it did. A lot has happened in the past month, so I wanted to provide an update for those who asked. Rebecca's legal threats turned out to be just that, threats. After consulting with 3 different attorneys for initial consultations, according to her sister, she finally accepted that she has no case against me for child support. The prenatal DNA test, combined with our finalized divorce before the birth and the subsequent confirmation of Jason's paternity, makes it virtually impossible for her to pursue me financially. Jason, on the other hand, is now legally required to pay child support based on his income as a professor. It's not the windfall Rebecca was hoping for, but it's something. Her strong single mom social media persona is still going strong, though the deadbeat dad posts have tapered off since the support payments started. As for me, I've started a new job at a different company. Too many awkward run-ins with former colleagues who'd taken sides. The fresh start has been good for me. I'm also planning to move to a neighboring city once my lease is up, not running away exactly, but creating some healthy distance from the whole situation. The most unexpected development is that I've reconnected with someone from my past, an old friend from college who moved to my area recently. We've been taking things extremely slowly, but there's potential there. She knows the full story, and her perspective as an outsider has been refreshing. "You didn't dodge a bullet," she told me after hearing everything. "You dodged a nuclear missile." Rebecca reached out once more, not for money this time, but to suggest that I might want to be a part of the baby's life, since he needs a positive male role model. I declined politely but firmly. While I bear no ill will toward an innocent child, getting involved would only complicate an already messy situation and potentially give Rebecca false hope about reconciliation. Her sister continues to send me occasional updates, which I've again asked her to stop unless it's something I truly need to know. I'm ready to close this chapter for good. Looking back at the whole ordeal 6 months later, I'm struck by how differently I see things now. What felt like the end of the world has become a fortunate escape. I could have spent years raising a child that wasn't mine, with a woman who saw deception as a valid strategy to get what she wanted. Instead, I'm rebuilding. It's not always easy, but every day is better than the last. For anyone in the early stages of a similar situation, it gets better. Hold on to that truth on the dark days. Thanks again for all the support, Reddit. Sometimes strangers on the internet understand better than the people who are supposed to know you best. Edit. Since several people have asked, yes, I'm aware that in many states, being married when a child is born creates a legal presumption of paternity regardless of biology. North Carolina follows this presumption, but allows it to be rebutted with DNA evidence if acted upon promptly. My lawyer filed a specific motion addressing paternity alongside our divorce petition, which is why we were able to overcome this presumption. Always consult with a lawyer familiar with your local laws. What worked in my situation might not work everywhere.
She said, I bring my looks and presence to the table. You need to earn $200K minimum to handle me. She worked part-time retail. I replied fair trade. Then I hired a professional matchmaker to find me a doctor who earns $200K herself. When she saw me with a successful partner who actually brings something to the table. So I need to give you some context here because this situation did not come out of nowhere. I'm 34 and I've been dating Chelsea for about 10 months. Met her through mutual friends at a barbecue last summer. She's 28, works part-time at a boutique clothing store, pulls in maybe $25K a year if we're being generous. From the start, I made my expectations clear. I'm not some guy who's going to bankroll someone's lifestyle. I make around $140K as a systems engineer, and I worked hard to get here. No college degree, just certifications and grinding my way up over 12 years. When we started dating, I told her straight up that I split things equally. Dinner, trips, entertainment, all of it. She seemed cool with it at first. The first couple months were actually fine. We'd go Dutch on dates, she never complained, things felt balanced. She had her own apartment with a roommate, paid her own bills, seemed independent enough. I liked that about her. I'm not trying to be anyone's father or ATM. Around month 3 things started shifting. Small comments here and there. We'd be watching a show and she'd point at some guy's house and say that's the kind of place I deserve to live in. Or we'd see a nice car and she'd mention how she's always wanted one. Nothing too crazy, but I noticed the pattern. She was testing the waters. Month 5 is when she started getting more direct. We were splitting a dinner bill and she made this comment about how a real man would just pay for everything. I shut that down immediately. Told her I'm a real man who expects equality in a relationship. She got quiet but dropped it. The thing is, Chelsea is attractive. I'm not gonna lie about that. She's the type who turns heads when she walks into a room. And I think that's been her currency her whole life. Pretty face, nice body, and an expectation that those things alone should open every door for her. The problem is, I'm not impressed by just looks. I've dated attractive women before. It wears off when there's nothing else there. By month 7, the comments were constant. She wanted to move in together, but expected me to cover most of the rent because she made less. I said no. She wanted to go on vacation, but expected me to pay for most of it because it was my idea. I said we either split it or we don't go. She wanted me to buy her expensive birthday gifts, but got me a $30 shirt for mine. I noticed. Here's where I started pulling back. I'm not stupid. I could see exactly what kind of relationship she was trying to build. One where she shows up looking good and I fund the lifestyle. That's not what I signed up for. I started suggesting cheaper dates, free concerts in the park, cooking at home instead of restaurants, hiking instead of shopping trips. She hated it. Started complaining that I was being cheap, that I made good money and should be willing to spend it on her. I reminded her that we'd been dating less than a year and I didn't owe her anything beyond respect and honesty. She did not like that answer. Month 9, she started really ramping up the pressure, talking about how all her friends' boyfriends bought them things, how her coworker's boyfriend just surprised her with a designer bag, how disappointed her mom was that I hadn't proposed yet. I told her if she wanted a designer bag, she should save up for it herself. If her mom was disappointed, that was between her and her mom. And proposals happen when both people are ready, not on someone else's timeline. About 2 months ago, we were at her place, and she was scrolling through social media, showing me all these engagement announcements. Really laying it on thick. Then she looked at me and said, "When are you going to step up?" I asked her what she meant by step up. That's when she said it. She told me she brings her looks and presence to the table, that she makes me look good, that having a girlfriend like her is valuable. Then she said, if I wanted to keep her, I needed to start acting like it. She said guys who date women like her need to be making at least $200K minimum to handle her lifestyle, not $140K. I asked her what she brought to the table besides looks. She got offended, said her presence was enough, that she was the prize. I looked at her and said, "Fair trade." She smiled like she'd won something. I left her apartment and drove home. Spent the whole drive thinking about what had just happened. This woman who makes $25K part-time working at a clothing store just told me I don't make enough money for her. This woman who I've been splitting bills with for almost a year just implied she's been settling for me. This woman who brings nothing to the table but her appearance just called herself the prize. I got home and did something I'd been thinking about for a while. I hired a matchmaker. Not just any matchmaker, but one of those high-end professional services that cater to successful people who don't have time for regular dating. Cost me $5K up front. I told them exactly what I was looking for. A woman who makes good money herself, someone with ambition and drive, someone who doesn't see relationships as a meal ticket, professional, educated, independent. I didn't break up with Chelsea right away. I know that sounds bad, but here's my logic. She just told me I wasn't good enough for her, that I needed to make more money to deserve her. I was done mentally, completely checked out, but part of me wanted to see if there actually was someone better out there before I burned that bridge. Maybe that makes me an asshole. I don't know. But she'd spent months telling me I wasn't enough, so I figured I'd find out if someone who actually was enough even existed. The matchmaker worked fast. Within a week, I had 3 profiles to look at. All successful women. One was a lawyer making $180K. Another was a senior accountant at a big firm pulling in $160K. The third was Dr. Sarah Chen, an emergency room physician making $220K. I looked at Sarah's profile and something clicked. She was 32, had gone to medical school, finished her residency, and was now working at a major hospital. Her profile said she was looking for someone mature who understood that her schedule was demanding, someone independent who had their own life, someone who valued equality and partnership. We matched and started messaging. She was direct and honest, no games. Told me up front that she worked 60 hours some weeks and that dating a doctor meant understanding last-minute cancellations and exhaustion. I told her I worked in tech and completely understood demanding careers. We set up a coffee date for the following Saturday. Meanwhile, Chelsea was texting me constantly. Wanted to know why I'd been distant, why I hadn't come over, why I wasn't responding as much. I kept things short, told her I was busy with work. Which wasn't a lie. I was busy, just not with work. The coffee date with Sarah went better than I expected. She showed up in scrubs because she'd just finished a shift, apologized for not having time to change. I told her I didn't care. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about how challenging emergency medicine can be. I told her about a system I'd just built at work. Neither of us was trying to impress the other. We were just 2 people having an actual conversation. She paid for her own coffee without me even asking. When I mentioned I usually split things, she laughed and said, obviously. Why would she expect someone else to pay for her caffeine? I knew right then this was different. We went on 3 more dates over the next 2 weeks. Lunch between her shifts. A movie where we both paid for our own tickets. Dinner where we split the bill exactly down the middle. She never once expected me to pay for everything. Never once mentioned my salary or what I should be buying her. She talked about her career goals, her plans to specialize. The house she was saving up to buy on her own. Chelsea noticed I was pulling away. Started getting aggressive about it. Showed up at my place unannounced twice. I didn't let her in. Told her I was busy. She demanded to know if I was seeing someone else. I told her we'd talk soon. After a month of dating Sarah, I knew this was something real. Someone who actually had her life together. Someone who didn't need me to fund her existence. Someone who saw relationships as a partnership between equals. Actually, that's not completely accurate. I knew after 3 weeks. But I'm trying to make myself sound less like an asshole here. The truth is, I'd been emotionally done with Chelsea since that $200K conversation. I was just going through the motions while figuring out if there was actually something better out there. There was. So after 3 weeks with Sarah, I ended things with Chelsea properly. I texted her and said we needed to talk. She came over that evening. I told her I'd been thinking about what she said. About how she brings looks and presence to the table, about how I need to make 200K to handle her. I told her she was right. She smiled. Then I told her I'd found someone who actually makes that 200K herself. Someone who brings more than just looks to the table. Someone who doesn't need a man to fund her lifestyle. Chelsea's face went from smug to confused to angry in about 5 seconds. She asked if I was serious. I told her completely serious. I said I took her advice and found someone who actually is worth that level of success. Someone who earned it herself instead of expecting a man to provide it. She started yelling, calling me every name in the book, said I was lucky to have her, that I'd never find anyone better. That she was the best thing that ever happened to me. I let her finish. Then I told her if she believed that she should have no problem finding another guy, probably one who makes even more than 200K. She could go be someone else's prize. I opened the door and asked her to leave. She stood there for a minute like she couldn't believe what was happening. Then she grabbed her stuff and stormed out. Slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. The text started an hour later, first angry, then confused, then sad, then angry again. I didn't respond to any of them. Finally blocked her number after she sent 43 messages in one night. Update 1. It's been just over a month since I ended things with Chelsea. The fallout has been more entertaining than I expected. First off, Sarah and I are still seeing each other. We made things official last week. No drama, no games, just two adults who enjoy each other's company and respect each other's independence. She met some of my friends over the weekend and they all loved her. One of my buddies pulled me aside and said, "This is what a real partner looks like." Chelsea did not take the breakup well. The mutual friends who introduced us got caught in the middle. She apparently told everyone that I dumped her out of nowhere for no reason, that I was cruel and cold, that she never saw it coming. Our mutual friend Mark called me to get my side of the story. I told him exactly what happened. How she said I didn't make enough money for her. How she expected me to fund her lifestyle while bringing nothing but looks. How she called herself the prize. Mark was silent for a minute, then said, "Yeah, that sounds like Chelsea." Apparently I wasn't the first guy she'd tried this with. Her last boyfriend before me broke up with her for similar reasons. She'd expected him to pay for everything and got mad when he wouldn't buy her a car. Mark said he'd tried to warn me early on but didn't want to overstep. 2 weeks after the breakup, Chelsea showed up at a bar where she knew I'd be. Some mutual friends had posted about meeting up there, and she must have seen it. I was there with Sarah and some friends. Sarah had just gotten off a shift and met us for drinks. She was still in her scrubs with her hospital badge visible. Chelsea walked in, saw us, and froze. I watched her process the whole scene. Me with another woman. That woman clearly just coming from work as a doctor. That woman laughing and comfortable and fitting in perfectly with my friends. Chelsea stood by the door for a solid minute just staring. Then she walked over. She ignored Sarah completely and asked if we could talk outside. I said no. Whatever she wanted to say, she could say right here. She looked at Sarah, then back at me and asked if this was the doctor. I said yes. She asked how long we'd been together. I said that wasn't her business anymore. Chelsea's face did this thing where she was trying to look unbothered but couldn't quite pull it off. She said, "Cool, good for you." Then looked at Sarah and said, "Hope you know what you're getting into. He's cheap and won't treat you right." Sarah smiled and said, "He treats me perfectly." We split everything equally like adults. Chelsea didn't have a response to that, just turned and left. My friend Amy, who was there, said Chelsea looked like she'd been slapped. Later that night, Amy told me Chelsea had been posting on social media about how men these days don't know how to treat women, about how chivalry is dead, about how she deserves a man who values her. The comments were mostly other women hyping her up, but a few people were asking what happened. She wasn't giving details, just vague posting about being undervalued. Meanwhile, Sarah and I went to dinner a few days later. A nice place, not super expensive, but nice. We split the bill as usual. While we were paying, she mentioned how refreshing it was to date someone who didn't have weird expectations about money. She said her last relationship ended because the guy was intimidated by how much she made. Felt emasculated that she earned more. I told her that was his problem, not hers. She smiled and said, "That's why this works." A few days after that, Chelsea tried a different approach. She texted me from a new number. Said she'd been thinking a lot about what happened, that maybe she'd been wrong about some things, that she missed me, that we should talk. I didn't respond. She texted again the next day, said she'd been under a lot of stress from work and hadn't been thinking clearly, that she didn't really care about money, that looks aren't everything, that she valued our relationship. I screenshot the messages and sent them to Mark, asking if he thought I should respond. He said, "Absolutely not. She was only reaching out because she saw me with someone successful and realized what she'd lost." He said Chelsea had been asking mutual friends about Sarah, asking how much doctors make, asking if we were serious, asking if I seemed happy. I blocked the new number. A few days later, she tried calling from her work phone. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail saying we needed to talk about closure, that she deserved an explanation, that I owed her a conversation. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. This weekend, Sarah and I are going to a fundraiser at her hospital, black tie event. She asked if I was comfortable going to something related to her work. I said, of course. Why wouldn't I be? She said her ex used to hate these events, made it all about him, complained the whole time. I told her I was looking forward to it, meeting her colleagues, supporting her career, being part of her world. The event is Saturday. I bought a new suit for it. Sarah showed me her dress, asked if it was too much. I told her she could wear whatever made her feel good. She looked relieved. Said her ex used to criticize her outfit choices, didn't like when she stood out too much. I told her that guy sounded like an insecure jerk. She laughed and said, yeah, he was. Meanwhile, Chelsea posted a selfie yesterday with a caption about knowing her worth, about not settling, about waiting for a man who can handle her. The comments were full of "you go girl" and "he didn't deserve you anyway." I didn't engage, didn't like or comment or anything, just observed from a distance. Sarah doesn't know the full story about Chelsea. She knows I got out of a relationship shortly before we met. Knows it ended because we wanted different things. I haven't told her about the 200K comment or how I specifically hired a matchmaker to find someone successful. Maybe I will eventually. But right now, it doesn't matter. What matters is I'm with someone who actually brings something to the table. Someone who doesn't see me as a wallet. Someone who earned her own success and respects mine. The irony is not lost on me. Chelsea wanted a man who made 200K to handle her lifestyle. I found a woman who makes 220K and doesn't need anyone to handle anything for her. Chelsea thought her looks were enough. Sarah has looks and brains and ambition and independence. Chelsea called herself the prize. Sarah doesn't need to call herself anything. Her life speaks for itself. Update 2. The hospital fundraiser was last night, and honestly, it was one of the best nights I've had in years. Sarah introduced me to her colleagues. Doctors, nurses, administrators. Everyone was accomplished and interesting, and nobody cared what I did for a living until I brought it up. The conversations were about medicine, patient care, hospital politics. I was just there as Sarah's partner, and that was enough. At one point, an older doctor asked how we met. I told him through a matchmaker. He laughed and said his daughter used the same service. That dating is hard for successful people, because so many others have ulterior motives. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. Later, she told me that comment meant a lot to her. That she'd dated guys who were clearly only interested in her income or status. Guys who saw her as a trophy or a meal ticket in reverse. We got home around midnight. Sarah was exhausted but happy. Said she'd never been to one of these events with someone who didn't make it weird, who didn't compete with her or diminish her or make snide comments about her career. I told her, that's just basic respect. She said, you'd be surprised how rare that is. This morning, I woke up to 13 missed calls from an unknown number and a string of texts from Chelsea's best friend, Vanessa. The texts were unhinged, calling me a liar and a user, saying I manipulated Chelsea, saying I led her on just to dump her for someone richer, saying I was shallow and cruel. I didn't respond. Instead, I screenshot everything and sent it to Mark. He called me immediately, told me Chelsea had a complete meltdown last night. Apparently, someone showed her pictures from the hospital fundraiser. Sarah and I were in the background of a photo that one of her colleagues posted on social media. Sarah in her dress looking elegant, me in my suit with my arm around her. The caption was something about what a wonderful evening supporting the hospital. Mark said Chelsea lost it. Started crying about how I replaced her, about how I moved on so fast, about how the new girl was everything she wasn't. Vanessa had apparently been there consoling her and decided to take matters into her own hands by attacking me. I blocked Vanessa's number. An hour later, Sarah texted asking if everything was okay. Said she'd gotten a weird message from someone claiming to be my ex's friend. I called her immediately, told her the whole story, the 200K comment, Chelsea's entitlement, the matchmaker, all of it. Sarah was quiet for a minute. Then she started laughing, said that's the most logical thing she'd ever heard. If someone tells you they're too good for you, go find someone who actually is that good. She said Chelsea did me a favor by showing her true colors. I agreed. Later that day, Chelsea herself texted from yet another new number. This message was different. She said she'd made mistakes, that she was sorry, that she'd been scared of commitment and pushed me away, that she realized now what we had was special, that she wanted another chance, that she'd changed. I showed the message to Sarah, asked her opinion. She read it and shook her head. Said people who actually changed don't lead with "I've changed." They lead with "I understand what I did wrong." She said Chelsea was only sorry because she saw what she lost, not because she understood why she lost it. I sent one final message back to Chelsea. Told her I appreciated the apology, but we wanted fundamentally different things. I wanted a partner. She wanted a provider. Those aren't compatible. I wished her well and said I wouldn't be responding to any more messages. Then I blocked that number too. The next day, Vanessa posted something on social media. Didn't name me directly, but it was obvious. A long rant about men who use women and discard them. Men who trade up for someone with more money. Men who are intimidated by beautiful women, so they date plain ones who won't challenge them. The comments were a mix of support and people asking what happened. Sarah saw it because apparently Vanessa had tagged the hospital in the post, trying to blast me publicly. One of Sarah's colleagues sent it to her. Sarah screenshot it and forwarded it to hospital HR and security. Told them someone was harassing her new partner and using the hospital's name to do it. Within an hour, the post was gone. Vanessa had deleted it. Probably realized tagging a major hospital while making baseless accusations could have consequences for her. Sarah told me later she wasn't going to engage with that kind of drama publicly. Not worth it. But she also wasn't going to let someone use her workplace to attack people. Smart move. Chelsea tried one more time. Showed up at my apartment building 2 days ago. The front desk called up asking if I was expecting a Chelsea. I said no and to not let her up. She apparently waited in the lobby for an hour, hoping I'd come down. I didn't. Eventually, building security asked her to leave. She left a note with the front desk. I picked it up yesterday. It was 2 pages of handwritten apology. How she'd been immature and selfish. How she'd taken me for granted. How she saw now that I was exactly the kind of man she needed. How if I gave her another chance, she'd prove she'd changed. How she didn't care about money anymore. How she just wanted me back. I read it once and threw it away. Sarah came over that evening and I told her about it. She asked how I felt. I said nothing really. Chelsea was part of my past, a lesson learned about not wasting time on people who don't value you. Sarah nodded and said she'd had her own Chelsea. A guy who thought dating a doctor meant free medical advice and someone to show off. Someone who didn't see her as a person, just as a status symbol. We talked for hours about past relationships and what we'd learned. About red flags and boundaries. About the importance of being with someone who wants you, not what you provide. By the end of the night, I felt more connected to her than I'd ever felt with Chelsea in 10 months. Final update. It's been 2 months since the breakup with Chelsea, and I figured I'd close this out with where everything stands now. Sarah and I are doing great. We took a weekend trip upstate last month, split the costs of the cabin and gas, hiked during the day, cooked together at night. She had to take a few calls from the hospital for consults. I worked on my laptop for a few hours catching up on some projects. Neither of us made it a thing. We both have demanding careers, and we both respect that. Her parents were in town last week, and she asked if I wanted to meet them. I said yes. We all went to dinner. Her father is a retired engineer. Her mother is a high school principal. Both of them were warm and welcoming. Didn't grill me or interrogate me, just normal conversation about life and work and interests. At one point, her dad mentioned how happy Sarah seemed lately, how she was smiling more. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. On the Chelsea front, things finally settled down. She stopped trying to contact me around the 6-week mark. The last message I got was from a mutual friend saying Chelsea had started dating someone new. Some guy she met, who apparently has money. Good for her, I guess. Hope she finds what she's looking for. I ran into Vanessa at a coffee shop about 3 weeks ago. She saw me and immediately looked uncomfortable. I nodded at her and went back to my phone. She approached and apologized for the messages and the social media post. Said she was just supporting her friend and got carried away. I told her I understood loyalty, but maybe next time get the full story first. She nodded and left quickly. Mark told me Chelsea's been asking about me through mutual friends. Wants to know if Sarah and I are still together. If it's serious. If I'm happy. He's been shutting down those conversations, told Chelsea she needs to move on. That I have. That constantly asking about your ex is not healthy. The funny thing is, I don't think about Chelsea much anymore. She was a brief chapter, a reminder of what I don't want. Someone who thought looks were currency. Someone who measured relationships in dollar signs. Someone who brought nothing to the table, but expected everything. Sarah and I talked about moving in together in the next 6 months. We're taking it slow, making sure we're compatible in all the ways that matter. She's looking at buying a house. Asked if I wanted to look with her. Not as a co-buyer, just to give my opinion. I told her I'd love to. We spent last Saturday touring properties. She had a list of requirements: good neighborhood, close to the hospital, space for a home office, big kitchen, because she likes to cook. At one point, the realtor asked if we were buying together. Sarah said no, this is my purchase. He's just here for support. The realtor didn't even blink. Just moved on with the showing. Sarah told me later she appreciated how I didn't try to insert myself into her decision. Didn't try to make it about us when it was about her. I told her it's her house, her money, her choice. I'm just here to support whatever she decides. That's the difference. With Chelsea, everything was about what I could do for her, what I could buy her, how I could elevate her lifestyle. With Sarah, it's about being partners, supporting each other's goals, celebrating each other's successes, building something together while maintaining our independence. I'm not gonna lie and say I hired the matchmaker just to prove a point to Chelsea. But I'd also be lying if I said it didn't feel good to find someone who actually embodies the success she claimed she deserved. Someone who didn't need to be handled because she handles herself. Someone who makes more than $200K and doesn't think that makes her too good for anyone. Chelsea wanted a man who could afford her. I found a woman who can afford herself. Chelsea called herself the prize. Sarah doesn't need to call herself anything because her life speaks for itself. Chelsea brought looks and presence. Sarah brings looks, intelligence, ambition, independence, compassion, and equality. Last week, Sarah and I were cooking dinner at her place. She was telling me about a difficult shift at the hospital, a case that didn't go well despite their best efforts. She was processing it out loud, talking through what they could have done differently. I just listened, didn't try to fix it or offer empty platitudes. Just let her work through it. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "Thank you." I asked for what. She said for just listening, for not making it about you or trying to solve it, for understanding that sometimes I just need to process. I told her that's what partners do. She smiled and went back to chopping vegetables. A few minutes later, she said, "You know what I love about us?" I asked what. She said, "We're both whole people. We don't need each other. We choose each other." That's so much better. She's right. Chelsea needed someone to fund her life. I don't need Sarah to complete me or validate me or provide for me. She doesn't need me for any of that either. We're two successful, independent people who enjoy being together, who respect each other, who support each other without losing ourselves. That's what a real partnership looks like. Not someone bringing looks and expecting you to bring everything else. Not someone calling themselves the prize while contributing nothing. But two people who both bring something valuable to the table and build something together. Chelsea taught me what I don't want. Sarah is showing me what I do want. And honestly, I should probably thank Chelsea for that conversation 2 months ago. If she hadn't told me I didn't make enough for her, I never would have hired that matchmaker. I never would have met Sarah. I'd probably still be splitting bills with someone who resented me for not being her personal ATM. So yeah, she said I needed to earn $200K minimum to handle her. I found someone who earns $220K and doesn't need anyone to handle her. Fair trade indeed. Chelsea can keep looking for her 6-figure man. I found my equal partner, and I'm not looking anymore.